Well, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for those of you who've stayed on in the room. I think we actually got an interesting discussion ahead of us as we talk about building a future-ready organization and some important trends in diversity and flexibility. It's also quite refreshing that in a room almost 90% full of women, my two panelists here happen to be men today. So give them a special round of applause for that. So here's how the session will run. I'll spend the next 19 or so minutes with some questions that I've got for the panelists. And then I'll throw it open to all of you because I'm sure each of you has your own interesting question as well. So don't be afraid to put up your hands and go to one of the microphones around the room. So let's get started. Now, instead of doing introductions the usual way, I thought we'd do it a little bit differently and get Johan and Albert to tell us a little bit about themselves by answering this simple question. In the spirit of diversity, can you tell me one thing that's special or unique about you? Maybe we'll start with Johan.
Thanks for that question. And I wish that you told me you're going to ask me that question before. Okay, so in terms of diversity, I think my background is very diverse. I think I come from an educational background which stretches all the way from Malaysia to the UK and Singapore, and then back to Malaysia. And I think when I returned back to Malaysia over 7 years ago, I think I was very happy to be back home and to be contributing to building our nation again, using my, what talents I have, which is really in helping companies achieve high performance, and especially Malaysian companies. And I think one of those ways that we can optimize performance in Malaysia is through this whole talent equation. And that's why we are very proud partners with TalentCorp to be working with them to help bring this agenda forwards as well.
Well done for coming back and helping to build the nation. And Albert, what's one thing that's different about you?
Sure, Stephanie. I'll volunteer too, since we have a bit of time here. When I was 13 years old, I was actually naively accepted an enrollment into a boarding school, which is run by the government. Imagine the tough time during the orientations, and you heard ragging, and I'm not sure the lull of being having to make stand guard the whole night, holding a pole, which is a broom, and undergarment guarding a dorm, and the high of diversity and inclusion in government boarding school. I'm still debating, whether I have more scar after the school, from the compliance I have to gone through, or whether the diversity and inclusion has shaped the way I am. Right? And the second phase in life, when I was forced to volunteer in my mom's not-for-profit kindy and tuition school. So over the years, I had a lot of chance to teach underprivileged kids, and hence, I'm a bit more cerebral and open in my style. So I actually had two stories to tell.
Okay, so let's get started, and maybe I'll start with you, Johan. So I understand that Accenture has a report called Reinventing Work in ASEAN, where you talk about how the future workplace will evolve and what employers need to do to adapt to these trends. And when we think about the future workplace, it can conjure up sometimes very futuristic sort of images. You might think of, machines taking over the place of humans and teleportation and all that, but it doesn't have to be that way. A lot of companies today are already starting to do these things, right? So maybe you could tell us a little bit more about some of the themes that came out of your report and what some companies are already doing to put them in place.
So I'm at the risk of not being really a very good consultant. I only have one slide, and this is the one slide, and it is about what we think the future of work is. I think as Accenture, we are always thinking about how the workplace is going to be different, because for our own selves as well as for our clients. And we see that technology, societal shifts, etc., are changing. And in ASEAN, this pace is even faster than almost anywhere else in the world. And also across a number of different countries that we have here, we're each at different stages. These are all going through a change in the way that we do work, right? So there's 5 major shifts that we see reshaping work in ASEAN. Number one, a workforce that's multi-generational and diverse. And what that means is that we have up to 4 generations of workers working in teams together, all the way from the Gen Ys, 20-somethings joining the workforce, all the way to people who are taking advantage of the fact that retirement age is a lot later now, in their 60s, and actually also contributing to the workforce at that point in time. And you have sometimes three generations, 4 generations in a team, and how do they work together? The cultural shifts, gaps that they have, is managing that is going to be a challenge. But if you manage it right, it can be incredibly powerful. The experienced older workers and the energy and the sort of like the future-looking attitudes of the younger workforce are amazing. Related to that is a new mindset and new skills, right? We have people coming to the workforce now that have skills that you wouldn't even imagine 5 years ago, and let alone 10 years ago. And those skills are very, very different. And we expect that these set of skills are going to evolve and change even faster in the next 20 to 20 years, right? And they have a different mindset of the way that they want to work, the way that they hope to deliver value for their organizations and for themselves. And as such, they also expect highly customized work experiences. It's not a one-size-fits-all anymore. They expect that they have their way through their working career is going to be different. And in Accenture, we already implemented that. Not everyone is in the consulting workforce. We have people who do different jobs in our organization, and hence we've customized the work's terms and conditions to be able to take into account that they have different requirements. And obviously, we also have flexible work arrangements which help with that, customizing the work experience as well. The other way, it's the way that we organize, the traditional hierarchy of command and control. That really is going away with technology and the way that things are happening. Workforces are being organized in radically different ways nowadays. A good example is companies such as Maxis in Malaysia that has come in. The new CEO has brought in a very new way of thinking about their workforce and collapsed 13 levels of hierarchy into 4. And that is to help with the multi-generational workforce to get new mindset, new skills, and customizing work experiences, all that. But beyond that, it's also looking at a workforce that you don't necessarily hire everyone. And that we're talking about number 5, integrated external resources using open ecosystems. What that means is that you don't necessarily have to hire and train everyone that contributes to your company. You can actually, what they call crowdsource, open source, a lot of the work that you do. So if something that is a piecemeal piece of work can be done by a group of people out there who have a few hours a day or a few days a week to spare to help contribute, right? And then earn a little bit of money in doing so. And there are networks out there where in Accenture we already use that with our contractor pool, which we use to come and help deliver projects on a project basis already. And we are hoping to be able to expand that to even broader sort of ways of working as well. So those are 5 major shifts that are reshaping work in ASEAN. And I think that a lot of us are already seeing that happening in Malaysia. But the question is, are you ready to be able to take advantage and to cope, not just cope, but take advantage of these shifts to actually bring your organizations to the next level?
And I think we can maybe touch on that a little bit later.
Yeah.
And interestingly, you brought up Maxis, and I heard that Morten Lundell, the CEO, has actually moved out of his office and now sits amongst his people. So that's, very obvious change that they've started to do. So maybe we could talk a little bit about Cisco. So one of the, Johan has shared with us some of the trends that will be taking place. Now, one of the things that will change, obviously millennials or the Gen Y will make up a huge part of our workforce in the future. And one thing that they tell us, and this comes out in a new survey that PwC has done, 97% of male millennials and 99% of female millennials say that work-life balance matters to them. And of preferred employer traits, flexibility is right at the top 3. So it's very obvious that work-life balance and flexibility isn't necessarily a parent or a female-only thing, right? And I hear that Cisco has a very flexible culture, and you use technology to enable that. So maybe you could tell us a little bit more about that.
Absolutely, Stephanie. So first, let me share a few market trends that we're seeing in Malaysia. You've heard this morning on women's in the workforce has been declining. But more interestingly, the millennials, both female and male, are entering the workforce in droves in the next 10, 15 years. In fact, by 2020, more than half of the workforce in Malaysia will be millennials. And this evolving social contract we are seeing is forcing us to rethink from workplace or work-life balance to work-life integration. Right? Balance suggests a trade-off. Integration suggests the ability to mix and match depending on the situation. For example, a mother who is actually attending a son's sport day can actually work in the stadium. And it's possible today with technology. And Malaysians, as we know, are embracing technology ferociously. In fact, Malaysians are one of the most mobile nations in ASEAN. In fact, in the next 10 years, we will see a tenfold increase in consumption of mobile data. We are very social. 1/3 of us use our online time on social Facebook and Twitter and whatnot. And obviously, we consume video, right? We download video at least once a month. So all these are creating the right environment for us to change the way we think about work. Cisco used to think work is a place to go. Now it's work is something that we do. And let me share with you a few examples. So Cisco, in the last many decades, has implemented our flexible work policy. It's a collection of work practices, both formal and informal. So we have formal work practices like remote worker, job sharing, and on and off ramp, right? You can take time off for a year and come back to the same job. And informal work practices include telecommuting. In fact, 90% of Cisco employees telecommute twice a week. That means 2 days in 5 days, they work from home, they're in cafe, they're in in any place they choose to be, right? Without having to come to the office. And 6% of our global workforce are fully remote worker. So they don't have an office space. Home is where work is done. So these are some statistics which I just share with you, right? You can actually have work-life integration in the workplace. And workplace is not a place you go to; it's the things that you do. And close to half of our employees do not have a workspace, right? They are what we call hot desking and beyond. And because of the policy we have a different challenge in Cisco because of the flexible workspace that we have implemented and policy that we have inculcated in the company. So now we have issues of underutilization of our office space. In fact, our utilization is 40% in the past few years. But the benefit of FWP, or flexible work-life practice, is that we have less office space today than we used to have in the past few years. In fact, we save our office space by 30%. And our productivity of our office has gone up by about 60%. Let me share with you a few slides on an office in Cisco, Singapore. Let me first give you a disclaimer. Cisco does work very hard. We have good work-life integration. It's not all play, right? For you who know Cisco, our vision is to change the way we work, live, play, and learn. And let me show you a few examples. So this is the lobby of our Singapore office in Changi Business Park. Right, you see that in every floor, we incorporate technology to increase productivity and to inculcate innovation. So level number 7, you see at the entrance to the office, we have digital media signage, which allowed employees to check availability of office space. You can book a meeting room. You can check events that's happening for the day. We have privacy room for employees who choose to work in private, who want to have conversations with their colleagues without disturbing their peers. Space for collaboration. You see, if you notice, each of our space, we use technology to connect to people who actually work from home. You see a video screen in the middle, right? For those who can't come to the office, they can connect to your peers in the office. The place for work and play. This is one of the meeting rooms. We have our Changi Business Park. At the back there, you see a Cisco telepresence, which is a high-definition video conferencing to allow parties from different locations to have a meeting. A room for employees to retreat into, to have a break, to read and to take a nap. We play hard, and we work hard. Sorry, the slide is a bit slow.
Lots of fun.
And these are some of the use of technology in our workspace. You see here on your left, a high-definition video conferencing. This is how Cisco conduct most of our meeting daily. And if you look on the right, even at home or in your cubicle, we use video extensively to communicate and to collaborate. So Stephanie, back to you. Hopefully I give you some flavor of how Cisco is implementing our flexible workspace policy.
Very nice. And I have to ask you, how many hours of work do people actually get to do with all that fun stuff?
Interesting, Stephanie.
No, that's just kidding. Moving on, I think it's great you mentioned work-life integration and the benefits of technology allowing us to do that. But technology can be both a blessing and a curse sometimes, right? With work so intertwined into your life, are we expected to work around the clock, How do you find that balance or cutoff point? Maybe you could tell us a little bit about that, Johan. Do you find that there's an expectation for employees to do that?
Yeah, I think so. I think it comes down to personal discipline at the end of the day. And sometimes it's forced upon you, and sometimes it's something that you need to actually inculcate. And having good role models in your organization also helps as well. So I just recall coming up through my own career, I actually had a career break myself in the sense that when I returned to Malaysia, I actually had to help my family with sorting out their affairs. And as such, I couldn't continue to do a full-time job. So my organization allowed me to do a more internal-facing role that was regional, and then enabled by technology such as the likes of Cisco, Cisco WebExes, et cetera, allows me to be in meetings and to confirm meetings and actually collaborate with all of my peers across the whole of the region, effortlessly, right? And I actually worked 60%. And the other 2 days of life, I actually spent helping out with my family as well. I think in that 2 years where I was in this flexible work arrangement, actually taught me a lot about discipline, about how I segment my life and my work, and how I integrate them, right? So I use the technology to be able to do the work that I need to, but not to be on work all the time, because that actually kind of defeats the purpose as well.
Yeah, but that's a lot of personal discipline. Do you think employers are expecting their people to be on call, and responding to customers?
So, again, I think there's a little bit of two things going on here. Number one is respect from the employers. And I think one thing which I really appreciate about Accenture is that I very, very rarely get a call on the weekends. Very, very rarely. I mean, only when it's really, truly urgent and it's something that's a quick response that then I get a call on the weekends. I do work on the weekends, but it's at my my own terms, because I want to catch up some emails or get things done so that the rest of the week will be easier, or because I know that, like for example, this morning, I in the early morning, I'm going to be sending my son to school, so I won't be able to respond to those emails in the morning, so I might as well just clear them in the evening before at my own convenience. So those sort of things is personal discipline and a little bit of planning, and also respect from your employer that this is your private time, and that you have the responsibility but also the accountability for being able to produce the output that you said that you would produce. And that mindset shift towards outcomes that you deliver as opposed to presence or being on call at any point in time probably is the most important part.
Yeah, agree. You have to say that. That's true. Now, I think a lot of folks in this room will probably, nod their heads in agreement and say, yeah, flexibility is great. It brings a lot of benefits, right? But we need to be realistic about it. Not everyone has the access to talent, the deep pockets, the technology that Cisco has in place, right? So, Albert, maybe, for local companies who are still struggling with, just the issues of today, how do they change their mindset to start adapting to that, that new, flexible sort of environment?
Oh, very good question, Stephanie. I just want to address the distinguished guest here today, right? That the most important factor is always the business case of implementing flexible workspace. Does it make business sense, right? So in Cisco, we did extensive analytics on what was the outcome of our flexible workplace policy, okay? And the number is telling, right? We do more with less, right? So I said earlier on, 90% are telecommuting, 6% are 100% remote worker. And not only they are 10% more productive, attrition rate of our remote worker is 26% less than worker who actually come to the office. And we save our office space, 30% in terms of space savings. And look at the outcome which the industry is recognizing. We're rated by Fortune magazine's All-Stars employees at number 6 of thousands of companies. And for women, right, if you look at our recent award, National Association for Female Executive, top 50 companies for women at the board and executive level, right? We're socially responsible by bringing the underprivileged community back to the workforce, right? And in the US, we're recognized for our focus on the inclusion and diversity agenda. So first and foremost, it pays for itself, right, to have this policy. The second aspect is that you need to think through, that we need to think through is the guiding principle, right? The culture that we want to build is aligned to our vision. And in Cisco, we believe in trust and empowerment, and hence remote telecommuting is possible. We have consistent practices, policy, and processes. And in our policy, based on the job performance, we allow employees to choose their job role and their job type, whether they want to be a mobile worker or telecommuting. So all in all, it makes business sense, they're more productive, and secondly, we have the proof point. And come to talk to Cisco and our partner here, Accenture and PwC.
Thanks for that plug.
May I just add one thing to that? I know it's tough for local companies, and we've been working with a lot of local companies to try to help implement flexible work arrangements. I think baby steps is the way forwards, right? Do some simple things like staggered hours or flexible flexible hours or one day off a month or something like that. Those are the things that you've got to work out is going to be possible to implement in each of your companies. And TalentCorp is happy to talk to you to try to see what is possible. Start with the baby steps, and then you realize that once you have the flexibility, those business benefits will accrue and it actually will pay for itself. And the mindset will slowly shift towards what is that employee delivering in terms of outcomes, not how many hours is he or she spending in the office.
Yeah, and some of the words that I kept hearing pop out were trust and empowerment.
That's
and all
right.
That. Okay, so I'd like to throw it open to the audience. Do you have any questions out there?
My name is Aziza. I'm from Malaysian Employers Federation. A few things I want to ask. This, career comeback program, is it open to executive and non-executives? One. Second question, if these people come back in this career program, how long they should be away from work? I mean, if they have been taking care of babies for 2 years, 4 years, or 6 years, is there a definite time limit? And the third one is this program. You have this Employment Act. You have to abide by Employment Act. Do you look at the Employment Act, whether it should be amended so that it does not provide any hitchback later on? And then another one is the training. If these people come back, do you provide training first, or do they just come back and work? Thank you.
So I think that is a question for TalentCorp themselves, and Salika here will answer that for you.
Can you hear me? Puan Aziza, thank you for your question. I will take all the detailed questions later, or you can go over to the TalentCorp booth if you'd like details of the grant. But in summary, it is available to any women returnee who have worked for more than a year before and who've been away from the workforce for at least 6 months. And if you return to work and the employers retain you for more than 6 months, you'll be given the grant. Whether or not we are changing the Employment Act, I think there are many steps for us to start implementing FWA, which doesn't go out of line with what's currently in the Act. So we can start with things that we can implement, which are not costly or complicated to begin with, before we go into the hours of work for the week and things like leave bank and etc. Those are more complicated things that will come in the way of what the Employment Act allows us to do. But a lot of the flexible work that employers today have started, and many more out there, does not really need to look into how we are not going with what the Employment Act mandates, yeah? And a lot of the employers that are in the workforce today, in terms of flexibility at work, are also not in the category of workers that are governed by the Employment Act. So I'm not sure whether we need to worry too much about that. But having said that, we are having discussions on revisions to the Employment Act. So that's ongoing, but we don't need to wait for that to be revised, I believe, because we've worked with many employers to kickstart flexible work without having to look into too much of the Employment Act details.
Thanks, Salika, for jumping in. So does anyone else have a question? I see another hand in the middle, the back, and then in front. This lady over there.
I think Monsi has a question.
Yeah, and over there.
Good morning. I'm Manju from DHL IT Services. My question is to Albert, Cisco. You mentioned that by giving flexible working hours, you are able to save about 30% of workspace, etc., right? My question is, do you schedule this work, schedule people to say how many percent comes to work on that day or work from home? Because one of the challenges that we face is workspace is one. The other one is car parks in our organization. So how do you do it? That's my question.
Thank you for the question. Okay, I'll answer your first part of your questions in terms of the challenges we face. Yeah. So because of this flexible work policy, our office are perennially empty. Right. At most, it's 5 to 10% in our Cisco Malaysia KL office. So hence the activity workspace that we have created to attract them to come back because we have two policies actually. One is, or rather we have two categories of flexible work policy. One is formal, which is remote and part-time and job sharing. Right. So remote, they don't come to office. That's fine. The informal aspect is there is a lot of telecommuting. Right, like I said, 90% telecommute twice a week, so they don't come to the office. So what typically happens is, we walk into an empty office. There's not enough activities, and we were quite concerned on the fact that the employees are not connected to the culture and to the colleagues in the office. So hence, we not only save space, right? We design the office differently, right? Lots of play, lots for learn. There's space for collaboration. So we have, you can see we have games machine in the office. We have coffee machine and whatnot. And in terms of the car park, we recently make a change in our policy for Cisco Malaysia. All car parks in one centre is only for women, right? And our male colleague has to walk to obviously the adjacent building for their car park, right? So So we're trying to encourage them to come back. Our challenges is that they don't come back to the office, on the contrary to a lot of challenges you are facing.
Thank you.
There was another question here in front. And then one at the back. Yeah, and then you next. This lady here in front too.
Hi, morning. I'm Monsi from KPMG. Just wondering how successful have your flexible work policies or practices been in helping you retain your workforce? And the other question is specifically for Albert. You showed a lot of pictures from your Cisco Singapore office. What about Malaysia? Have you adopted any of these? Thanks.
So in terms of retention, I don't have the statistics offhand here, but we do have a good number of employees, both male and female, who have used FWA either now, currently, or in the past. I think one thing you have to remember about FWA is not necessarily that you need to use it forever. Sometimes people have a transitory requirement when their kids are at a certain age or whatever, so they'll use that for that point in time. If they feel that they can have continuity and still progress in their careers and still keep that connection, there's a much, much higher likelihood that they will stay with you, as long as you are a good employer that provides these things and a great working environment. There's no reason why they wouldn't stay. And I have a number of colleagues, both in the consulting line as well as in other career tracks in Accenture, who have taken advantage of these. One of our people advisors has just come back to work after having a baby. One of my fellow partners took a sabbatical for over 6 months to go traveling with her son because she felt that she needed to spend more time with her son. So these are things that are possible. And in terms of retention, it's very hard to measure, but it's definitely there.
And do you have a high take-up rate for flexible work arrangements?
We are not aiming for any particular take-up rate. I think it is taken up by anyone who so requires, right? And it's about a discussion with HR, with your manager, with whoever it's required to say, hey, I've got this circumstance in my life. Is there something you can do about it? Yeah.
Yeah, to answer Monsi's questions, women take up a large proportion of our flexible work program in Cisco. And we actually have statistics to show that women tend to be more loyal, and the attrition rate is up to 26% lower. In fact, I have Samantha here, my HR manager for Cisco Malaysia. We're happy to host you in Cisco Malaysia. We have actually 30 distinct workspace type in Cisco template. We've probably implemented 5 or 6 in Cisco Malaysia because we only have 150 employees versus our Singapore office. So we have our pantry, which we have game console. We have a playroom. We have lots of those private space for employees for female employees to breastfeed and for them to recess into a private space at their convenience. So we do have a lot of space that you just seen on my slide just now, Monsi. I'm happy to bring you to a tour of Cisco Malaysia office.
Yeah, and where's Samantha, right? She's right here in front,
Yes.
for those of you who want to speak to her after this. I think we had a question from the lady here on the left in the pink jacket. Yeah.
Thank you. I've been experimenting with flexible practices ever since I left Shell. I started my own consultancy, but my main aim was to look after my children, so I had to turn down a lot of jobs. Later on, I started outsourcing to ladies, and I trained them in editorial work. Now, I find that in my field of work, writers do not like to work with a company. They get more freelancing. So now I have come to this conclusion that the best thing for a woman to keep in touch with the job market while raising the children is to work 4 hours a day or half a day. I've been looking around, and recently I saw this enrichment mall called the School by Jaya One. When I saw it, I thought it's the perfect place for me to relocate my business because then I don't have to worry about childcare. There are lots of children's activities going on. And I also noticed that many who have left the job market are very concerned with the education of their children. So many have gone into homeschooling. And I see there's potential in monetizing homeschooling to benefit other mothers. So my question is, how do we as a small company network with other bigger companies to make it work? Right now, I'm planning a series of editorial workshops where I bring in very experienced retirees who have a lot of experience in the media, publishing and writing. Our aim is to train a group of ladies and then look for the right jobs to outsource for them. So while they are working for 4 hours, there are educational activities to keep them going. So can you give me some pointers how I can network with other people to make this a success? Thank you.
You are actually showing one of the models that I highlighted there around a more flexible workforce. So in freelancing is the way forwards in a lot of ways, right? And I think technology actually can make freelancing even more efficient, especially you said editorial writing work, right? These are things that are normally piecemeal, right? So I need you to do X. And so there are actually a lot of networks out there that allow you to actually to put out a job, and then people can bid on that job to say, I will do that piece of work for X, right? And it's like, and that those networks are out there, and I can get those details to you if you so require as well. And those are sort of networks out there. In terms of connecting with bigger companies and other companies such as yourselves, there are a number of different organizations. Magic comes to mind, Entrepreneurs Network, etc., who one of their sort of missions is to connect small companies that have particular skills and also requirements with other companies that may be able to help them with those sort of networks as well. So it's technology as well as the whole social side of things to be able to connect all these companies together, to be able to provide that liquidity. I think that's what you're looking for, right? Is that, i.e., women or men even for that matter, who have time, sort of 2-3 hours a day that they can actually put towards productive work, and the rest of the time they actually can do other things as well. Right?
Do you have anything else?
Yeah, in the US, interestingly, we have mothers who use telepresence or video to connect to their children back home, who just sit in front of a TV screen and they get educated, they get tuition from the mom who is working in Cisco offices. So technology can actually also help in some aspect with the question you just have. But how do you teach your children? How do you ensure the education are taken care of when you're actually out there in the workforce? So we do use technology in that aspect.
Okay, I think we have time for one final question here in the middle. Yeah.
Hi, my name is Shaliza and I'm with PwC. I'm a mother of 2 very small children, and finding work-life integration has been challenging, not without conscious sacrifices and having to set back. There's also facing competition from the younger generation. My question is, how do companies create a level playing field in terms of opportunities and progression for employees that take up flexible working arrangements or looking at coming back?
Number one, I think your whole performance management expectations mindset has to be around outcomes delivered, right, rather than anything else. Now, I think if you are still working full time but still deliver all the outcomes that you say you deliver, there should be no penalty in your career whatsoever, and hence there is a level playing field in that respect. However, obviously, if you do part-time work, etc., there is some consideration for that. But again, it's around setting the right expectations and then being able to achieve those expectations. And that requires a very disciplined set of performance measures, which are mutually agreed between the employee and the employer, and then a good amount of trust on both sides that to be able to make this work. And it has to be clear, I wouldn't say KPIs, but clear outcomes, which you need to be driving for your organization. I think that's the main thing. But the second thing I would say is around trust, because in the end of the day, if you're the manager who's assessing someone's performance, you also have to remember that you one day could also be in the situation where you will need those flexible work arrangements as well. And hence, there should be no penalty for those, no penalties other than those that are due to performance in itself. And that should be independent of any flexible work arrangements.
But yeah, but I'm not quite sure if that's what she meant. Because what about, providing this sort of environment that supports, these women who are coming back from a career break? And how do you create a level playing field for them? Because they've been out of the workforce for a while.
Okay, so I think if you can be coming back to a type of work that you've already been doing, then that normally is a smoother transition. So sometimes some refresher courses, especially around technology, etc., that may be required. And those do exist, by the way, and they are Malaysian, and the more progressive Malaysian employers are actually very keen to actually provide some of these courses to get people up to speed. If it's a completely different change in role, then obviously there is a lot of training that's required. And again, I think progressive employers will see that you're looking for people whose skills are there, their base skills, not necessarily all of the experience in a particular field, and they're going to have to invest in training and time to ramp up to be able to get someone productive in the workforce. But that's true for anyone, not just people just returning from the workforce.
Okay.
Let me just add, Cisco made it a policy. So in our flexible work practices, we have a policy for training and development for women who come back to Cisco. Right? So it's a policy that we have actually built in our culture.
Okay, well, it looks like we actually have a little bit more time. So do we have any more questions? If not, I have my... Oh, we've got one here from a gentleman. Great.
Afternoon. Is it morning? Obviously, I'm not a woman. I'm also not from corporate. I'm from an NGO. Yayasan Nautica. My name is Thaddeus Lee. Thus far, I see that employers are not optimistic of having women come back to go to the field, like engineering sites, sales, or marketing. I'm a CSR fundraiser, and I see that if women coming back from home to work, they can form a potent sales force if they gather on their own outside. You see, if they are in middle management, they go back to corporates to pitch for funds. I think they'll do very well. Do panel members share my optimism? Thank you.
Actually, I think that's another great one. Returning back to the workforce doesn't necessarily mean returning to corporate as well, right? And there are a lot of other productive and value-adding sort of activities in the Malaysian economy that can be done that way. I think it really depends on what is the commitment that a returning lady can commit to coming back. If you are on the roads of in a client-facing or customer-facing role, it can be very, very demanding on time as well as sort of meetings, etc. So not the flexibility it affords is probably not quite there. However, if it's not a pure corporate role, I think there are, as you said, there are other opportunities where it can be done on a part-time basis or it can be segmented somehow, right? And there could be an arrangement that can be made that makes sense for that person to return to the workforce. I think the main thing here is the conversation, right? To be able to say, hey, I'm willing to entertain that possibility. Let's talk about it. Let's see what works, and then having the time to be able to see what model works for that arrangement.
Three-quarters of my direct reports are women, and they are working mother. And because of our flexible work practices, right, they have the ability to schedule their own time for sending the kids to school, sending the kids to sports days and whatnot. So we can solve that using technology, using workspace policy, and of course, by inculcating different aspects of what we just discussed that Johan and Stephanie just highlighted this morning. It's feasible in today's world.
And okay, we are running out of time, so I'm going to take one final question from the gentleman here.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. I'm Chi Hao from Aon Hewitt. And thank you to the panelists. I'm sure there are a lot that can be learned from leading organizations like Cisco and Accenture. My question to you is that while these programs are being implemented in your organizations, what are the biggest barriers that you face in terms of your employees actually taking up these opportunities, especially in organizations where it is very client-centric or client-facing all the time? And how do you address these barriers? Thank you.
If I may say, I think the biggest impediment is the business aspect, right? What is the impact on client facing time, productivity, right? On innovations, colleagues coming together, innovate, and we just shown hard facts that in Cisco, despite a very dispersed workforce, right, they don't come together face to face every day. We are more productive, we are more innovative. And our productivity has shown 30% space savings in our real estate, right? And we have a challenge of filling up the other 60-70% of our workspace. Hence, all this cool, sexy toy to get them in to our office. So, we have the sets to show to you, right? By being flexible, we are more productive, we are more impactful in our business outcome.
I think I'll add to that. It's the mindset. I think a lot of Malaysian employees are still in the mindset that I need to see that person at their desk from 9 to 5, right? We need to move away from that, and it needs to move towards, I think, what Cisco has, and definitely what we have at Accenture is moving towards what is that person delivering in terms of outcomes. Once you take the baby steps by saying, implementing some flexible work hours or 1 day off a month or whatever, you realize that if you give a little bit of trust to your employees, they will give that trust back to you as well. It's a two-way street. And that then starts to build the ability to start implementing some of these more advanced flexible work arrangements, some of which will require more investment and a little bit more policy, etc. The other one is around awareness, but I think that's something that can be, again, something that can be planned through and made clear to your employees in terms of policy as well as how people have used it. So on the Flex Work Life portal, you'll see a lot of success stories about how people have implemented FWA and how individuals have taken advantage of FWA and how those success stories could also be in your organizations as well. So I encourage you to go to Flex Work Life. It's a treasure trove of policy, best practices, etc. And you should go there and see what is possible and what Malaysian companies are already doing. So it is very, very possible. And a lot of it, sorry to say, it's not all technology, but it starts with a mindset, and the technology makes it possible later. And a lot of that technology is already in people's hands. You already have it in your pocket.
The smartphones, right?
Yeah.
So, on that very encouraging note, I must thank our two panelists today, Albert and Johan. Thank you for all your time, and thank you to the audience